Welcome, it's Public Works Committee. It is 4 o'clock, it's September 23rd, and we're here to talk about stuff. So first up, we have a declaration of surplus equipment and vehicles from Jack Rickard, from the Streets and Engineer Field Supervisor. Jack, welcome to Public Works. Don't be nervous.
Oh, I'm good. Good evening, council members. As you can see, I'll be going through some pictures. So the history, the following assets and items are the subject of this request. The Leeboy paver, which is a 2001, 2,216 hours with non-replaceable auger boxes that are worn through, and the feeder plate also is very thin. The trailers, which you can see the Leeboys. One's a Felling 1226T 2003, and the Leeboy itself is both axles, if you can see, are half axles. They don't run all the way through. So the replacement parts on there are non-existent. We can't get parts to replace on those. And then the Craftco Polypatcher, which is the top left, is a 1999, and parts are unavailable to repair that. We had to do a lot of makeshift piecing together to keep that going as well. And then the GMC Top Kick dump truck, which is a 1995 with 146 miles, 692 with 11,389 miles. The top speed of that is 35 miles an hour loaded, 40 miles an hour empty. And then we don't have a picture of the loader plow, but it's our prototype plow that they made in-house in 2004, which is no longer will attach to our loaders. And then the GMC Flatbed 2000 is rusty and well-worn with mileage of 71,459 miles. This equipment and vehicles have been deemed of little or no value to the city department. We look to provide or offer in-house before we send these items to surplus. There is no cost to the taxpayers. The auction house takes a percentage of the bid auction item. There is a very minimal cost to the department for the shuttle of the items to Post Falls. If council should declare the listed equipment to be surplus, and authorize staff to dispose of them at auction. And I stand for any questions.
Questions?
Well, it makes sense to do that. I guess I just question the stuff. Do you think all of this kind of stuff will sell? And if it doesn't, do we have to take it back?
I don't think we've ever had to bring anything back.
Okay.
Somebody grabs a hold of it.
Okay, let's go for it.
That was kind of my question, because some of these trailers and things, I think, wow, if there's no replaceable parts, and we spend money to bring them there, and then somebody probably buys them for $1 and scraps them for $100. So,
Right.
steel price, I don't know.
The paving trailer now with the newer paver that we bought last season is overweight for both of those trailers.
Just so long as we don't have to spend money to get them back if that doesn't work. I think that was our question.
Right.
So I have a hard formula for you to ask is, when something is 15, 16, 18 years old and you can't get parts anymore, is that something that you would take into consideration as you buy new stuff? Or is that just the life of stuff?
For the most part, it's not so much the hour or the age, it's the material that you put through the machine that wears it down you know, the asphalt and or gravel that you can put through that machine. It's, they're wore down, so we keep it so long, and it just, all the updated new equipment, you just can't get parts for it.
So things
Older
like
stuff.
trailers, those giant trailers that carry so much weight, and you can't get the axles anymore.
Well, the axles are, as you think of a normal axle, the full length of it, these are individual on each side. There's not a straight axle under it. So it's just all that hardware up underneath there, you can't even get the bushings and or the smaller axles for each of those trailers.
So you don't buy those kinds of axle trailers anymore?
Negative.
Okay. It was a good idea, I bet.
Right.
All right. Any other questions? If not, looking for a motion, please.
Yeah, I would make a motion to declare the pieces of used equipment and vehicles presented as surplus and authorize the staff to proceed to auction.
Second.
Oh, been moved and seconded. Any other discussion, questions? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent, please. Thank you. Good job. Didn't hurt, did it? Mike Becker, welcome. Approve of change order number 2, the agreement between City of Coeur d'Alene and Apollo Inc. for construction of the wastewater tertiary treatment Phase 2 inputs. Are we ever going to be done with this, Mike Becker?
Well, good afternoon, Public Works, and the good news is, you bet we are. We are so close to the finish line, I can taste it. Not that I want to taste things out at the treatment plant. With that said, I won't repeat the decision point, but I am up here today to discuss approval of change order number 2. In open bracket, final, close bracket. This is our final change order for the agreement between the city and the contractor Apollo Incorporated for the construction of the wastewater tertiary treatment Phase 2 improvements. We really need to work on our titles to shorten them up somehow. So, what was this last project? As you know, we upgraded our primary clarifier, which is covered, captures the odors and pipes the odors to our compost facility. This is located on the south end of the treatment plant, right across from the collection shop. We also constructed a secondary clarifier tank with a, where'd my mouse go? There it is. With a building adjacent to it that houses some boilers and blowers and other piping type equipment. And lastly, we completed our tertiary membrane filtration system. That included tanks, piping, pumps, blowers, heaters, and membranes that fit inside the tanks. As you recall, last year, Council approved the change order number 1 for the bridge crane. This is a lifting apparatus that safely removes the tertiary membrane filtration cassettes, and so we can maintain them, clean them, and reinsert them within the tank. Change order number 2 is for all the unanticipated and additional work items common for the completion of projects of this size and complexity. The work summarized in this change order includes 35 change proposal requests, as well as 66 work change directives. Please keep in mind that these things were for unforeseen conditions. Before you is a slide that shows some photographs of some of the things that our contractor, this construction project, contended with. We had many pipes that had to be suspended midair while people like these gentlemen worked underneath them. We also had to contend with rerouting of pipes, as well as discovering all sorts of pipes within the treatment plant. This is why we don't allow any contractor just to openly dig out in our treatment plant. The word corrosion has once again revealed itself. The slide on your left shows corrosion occurring on the bottom end of this pipe, as well as some of the pumps that had the caustic material through the pipes. The treatment process that we have, while it's I want to say a state-of-the-art process, it utilizes some very caustic materials that we have to get from point A to point B, and that requires some pumps and some pipes, and those pumps and pipes end up having to deal with the caustic nature of some of this fluids that we are transporting from one end of the treatment plant to the other. So, the original, keeping in mind that this project transpired over 2 years, and it brought the plant from a 1 million gallon a day plant to a 5 million gallon a day plant. The original contract price was for $16,169,000. The bridge crane, that change order number 1 that was approved last year, was for $534,930. Change order number 2, which is before you today, and pending your approval, is for $971,404.59. This brings our amended contract total for this project to $17,675,334.59. Design and construction for this project was funded by a SRF loan obtained from DEQ. This loan was also amended for the bridge crane for another $500,000, bringing our total funding on this to $20,500,000. Funds for this change order are available within the fiscal year 1920 wastewater operating fund under account capital replacement. This is the account that was set up for unforeseen conditions such as this. This change order will increase the total cost of this project by 5.8% to the amended contract total. Now, industry norm for these type of projects, it ranges anywhere from 5 to 10%. Wastewater engineering has worked well with the contractor, the engineer, and as you can see by this diagram before you, our plant is now, these are 2 parameters that we have to treat for. They include both, I believe, ammonia and total phosphorus. And as you can see, prior to the plant coming online, we ranged pretty high in our concentration levels. Our treatment efficiencies have diminished quite a bit. These lines down here represent our baselines for both of those 2 constituents that I mentioned. The plant is functioning as intended. Staff is working on still optimizing this process by eliminating our outliers. And we have been quite pleased with the results of this project, even though that has taken 2.5 years to get there. So our recommendation at this point, council, is that we would like to have council approve the authorization for the mayor to execute change order number 2 to the agreement between the city of Coeur d'Alene and our contractor, Apollo Incorporated, dated February 7th, 2017, for the construction of the wastewater tertiary treatment Phase 2 improvements in the amount of $971,404.59. And with that, I will entertain questions.
Dan?
Well, I don't try to question the technical details. I trust, I mean, you can see that it's stuff that probably needs to be done. I trust all of that, and I also know from experience, I mean, it is never as cheap to go back after the fact. You know, if I bought the Easy Lift tailgate for my truck out of the factory, it'd be about $200 add-on, and now if I want to do it, it's $2,000 because I got to get a new tailgate and paint it and all that. So that part of it I understand, and it sounds like, you know, it's semi-expected, but I guess just, it seems like less than a week ago, we had a decision point on a, you know, $250,000 for another, you know, unanticipated. So it's kind of like, well, the furnace and the roof went out at the same time. So is our funding okay to handle this too? It sounds like it is, but I'd like reassurance.
So the funding that took place 2 weeks ago occurred in our current fiscal year. This funding will draw off of the monies that were dedicated into the following fiscal year.
Okay.
So, and you're quite correct. A lot of times what happens is when we do the excavation, some of these things reveal themselves that typically we thought were okay. And so now is the time to take care of it while we have a contractor on site. Otherwise, the 1,000 some odd pages of work change directives and change order requests that were included within this packet would be brought forth to council pretty much every council meeting, because we're constantly discovering things as we go. Ideally, we try to capitalize on the contractor being there. We get price quotes from him. When they seem reasonable, we go ahead and amass these, so these change orders, and to get the best deal for the city.
Right, and again, the kind of the bottom line of a 5 to 6% when all is said and done, and you discovered those things, that, you know, sounds within reason. So I'm good.
Okay. Kiki?
So hi, Mike. So you said that this project is near completion. So are we supposed to assume there will be another change order with the final, before a final completion is signed?
No, we actually got everything taken care of, I believe, with the exception of we had some areas where we were having odors backdraft up through our storm system. So those have already been accounted for into this change order.
Okay. So our loan was for 25, and to date, we're saying we're at 17.5?
17.6.
6. Oh, by the way, too, there was just this $400 difference in what you said for what this change order was for versus what was in our packet. This is 971,051 versus 971,454. But I just noticed that as we were talking, so. But one of my questions is, and I told Mike Gridley, heads up, walk us through this part, because normally it would appear to anyone who's watching that you're approving them spending all of this money, and in reality, this is semantics of approving work that's already been agreed to be paid for and/or paid for. So it's not really a change order, it's kind of approving money that's already been spent under not the contract, but additional monies from the original contract as agreed to by you and the engineer, correct?
It was agreed to by the wastewater superintendent as well as the previous capital program manager. So yes.
I guess I'm just wanting to, sometimes it feels like we are rubber stamping a big giant change order that is money that you've already spent. And so I'm wanting to make sure, and I think we've talked about that before too, that sometimes it feels like, well, we just threw $1 million on there. Did we just open the checkbook for a little while and let people spend what they wanted to? And so I wanted to make sure that we kind of walked through quickly how the statutes work within those public works contracts, that these are engineer-guided and management-driven documents that say this is how we're going to manage unforeseen things that come up. And how do we have a check and balance for the oversight on those things?
And that's a fair question to be asking. I think a lot has to be considered that you as the council governing body for the city are relying on your staff's expertise, the guys that are in the trenches that have the oversight, that's providing the oversight and the justification for doing these projects. Ultimately, we all have to answer to someone. In this case, we look at it from the standpoint, okay, what's the best and most efficient way that we can accomplish this work, keeping in mind our ratepayers, so we don't have to have our costs exceed what our money's coming in can allow. And so we consider, okay, we really need to take care of this, otherwise we will be in a situation that we're presently in with no heat to two buildings. Now granted, that was one of those things we didn't even know was occurring. When we excavate out the ground and discover a lot of unforeseen conditions, such as pipes corroding, pipes sitting on top of each other and rubbing against each other, or worse, up against the side of a tank, now's the time to move that pipe over or separate that pipe, and we'll pay the contractor to do that. We ask the contractor how much. He gives us a quote. If we don't like it, we renegotiate. It's like, I understand that, but, we could probably bring in our own crew to take care of that. You're here right now, can't you do any better? A lot of times, they end up stepping up. And this is also where we rely on the expertise of our consultant, HDR. HDR has this vast knowledge and resource pool that can say, we have had experience in this area. You may want to reconsider whether or not you fix this today or tomorrow. Now is the time to do it. So to answer your question shortly, in a short version, I guess, I think you have to rely on the fact that your staff is looking out for the best interest at this point. Management is out there. We have expertise, engineering expertise, professional expertise out there also guiding us. So we're trying to protect the city, protect the city's resources by ensuring that we have a final product that's going to get us into the next century or beyond.
And this is a very technical plant, and I get that. It's not as straightforward as some of the other projects we might deal with. But I was going through the 1,300-plus pages, thank you, of the change order. And there's a couple things that just stood out, and I just felt it was worth talking about quickly. And those are things like force account work, which is things that my understanding is when your contractor's there and you run into this situation and it has to be done, but it wasn't something that was known at the time, unforeseen, and then it becomes a different markup. So I'm looking at materials plus 5%, and then 15% of their profit and overhead, and then a 20% for force account work. So I'm looking at some of these things like I think it was a sampling sink, and that ended up being a $21,000 project, and a landscape and parking lot. Now, I only picked those two out because I think it's just, I really just thought about it and said, is it worth talking about? And then I finally said, I think it is, because those are things that, were they unforeseen, absolutely necessary, had to be done at that time, and worth a markup of 37%. And I could be exaggerating because there's some bond and insurance percentages in there that were a little high. But those are things that I guess it's, for me, sitting here and taking the time to approve these, it makes sense to dig in to look at some of those things and say, are we really watching all of those things? Or is there a time when we need to sit back and say, did we just get tired and we know we have 20 million in the loan and we got a lot of money left, so let's just spend some more money and do it the quick way? I mean, that's for lack of a better way to say, let me just pare that down for you. That's kind of what was on my mind as I walked through some of these change order requests. That's a big bite. Sorry.
I would like to have a response for you on that. I too have not experienced the satisfaction of going over all 1,300 pages of this. So I may have to defer this to our consultant HDR, which I brought in today, if you would like him to respond to
Sure.
that.
Any discussion is worth it for me, unless
You have
you guys.
some insight on
Okay.
that?
$1,000,000
Please come on up.
See if
You'll
he's
need to introduce
nervous.
yourself.
Hi, Ricky Schultz with HDR.
Thanks for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. So I'd have to look at the exact changes that you're referring to. I don't recall markups that large. The contractor is allowed a 15% markup on their self-performed work and 5% on subcontract work. And we review each one of those changes, so kind of what Mike was referring to is each one of these changes come in, we take a look at those, we look at labor rates, we consider what's the norm, does this make sense, what's being proposed here, and with each one of those changes, we review it, and with some of them, have that negotiation, that back and forth with the contractor to arrive at what we think each one is a reasonable price.
And maybe it's just some of the force account work I thought there was markups as well as a 20% on top. So it just seemed like on items that didn't, to the layman. I mean, I don't know, a parking lot, landscaping and all of that maybe needed to be done, but a force account work for a parking lot change just seemed like, it made me question who's really keeping a sharp eye on it. So that's why I brought it up.
Okay. I'd have to go back and look at those particular ones to make sure, but generally, that's what I recall from the.
I'll just drop you a note and let you know what change order numbers they are that I pulled out of there. And then that way I'll know that I'm looking at the right thing when I look at it.
Okay,
if that's
that'd be
right.
great.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I think that's all I had. My big thing was oversight on that, and I know that it's really, there's a lot of people, there's not just two of you working on this, there's a lot of names signing off on this, so I'm very well aware that it's not two guys making a decision. There's a lot of different names and a lot of different people that this goes through. So I just wanted to make sure that we're doing our due diligence and paying attention to the tax dollars, the user fee dollars.
I guess just a follow-up that to clarify that, that, as you go along and make these decisions, then does it get bounced off and approved by, finance or city administrator or something, some other staff eyes within the county, or within the city?
The wastewater superintendent has his hand in that all the time. If I'm not mistaken, he usually meets with the executive team on a biweekly or monthly basis to disclose some of that information. I'm not sure to what extent that he goes through on that. It would take up quite a bit of time at the ET meeting. So again, 1,300 pages on a project this size is not unheard of. I've called some of our neighboring cities, and we've discovered that we're all doing the same thing, very similar, and we all experience this. There's a lot of unforeseens that are occurring out there, and number of factors are causing them. Well, our goal here is when we find a solution, that we try to find a permanent solution, or at least one that will take us as far out down the road as possible. So that's where I come in.
I'm good.
So just a couple easy ones for Mike. The caustic thing, we did the caustic thing with the hot water and the heat last month, right? That thing. And then you're showing us again pipes with caustic. You guys deal with caustic materials through the pipes. Have the pipes in these amount of years, are anything guaranteed anymore? Or is it just, we're going to try this time?
Most manufacturers, this is a great question, Woody. I've been asking the same question out there. Most manufacturers will give you 1 year. I've never heard of a caustic material eroding away and eating away through a product designed, engineeringly designed to transport caustic materials within that time frame. It always occurs later on down the road, and it's usually due to an imperfection in the material. These pipes are small enough where we can't crawl up there to inspect the material, so we have to rely on the fact that this material is uniformly manufactured. Sometimes there's just common wear and tear. It's no different than, Councilman English's vehicle, it's every now and then vehicles just wear out. Mechanical pieces wear out, and especially if you add a very non-friendly fluid to it. And so, but the engineering behind the conveyance of these fluids is sound. I've researched out some of these various items throughout the plant. I've been called in to take a look at some of these things, and it's standard of practice what they're installing out there. So the heat loop system, the hot water system that was brought before council 2 weeks ago, last week, 2 weeks ago, was a unique situation. Again, many factors contributed to that corrosion. Any one were to be removed would eliminate that corrosion. So we're looking at this proactively from this standpoint too, but at the same time, we will experience more corrosion as we deal with more and more caustic material. Eventually, your treatment plant facility will phase away from some of this caustic material and use other technologies later on down the road. But until then, we're operating, as shown on that graph, we're operating pretty efficiently, pretty effectively. We're within compliance of our permit and future permit right now. So we're looking good.
I think on our history too, that sewer treatment plant's like one of the first, over 100 years old. It's been through many phases. I find it fascinating that every time you go and dig up something, there's things that you didn't know there. We have a map of everything that's there now, correct? You know every pipe you've discovered, so you have a line on the street or a drawing somewhere?
We are getting better at it. Keep in mind, we're dealing, like you said, with stuff 100 years ago. 100 years ago, put the pipe right there.
Right.
Was the method. Now we use GPS, and not only are we using GPS to install it, while they're out there surveying that new stuff we're putting in, hey, can you take a shot on this old pipe here and this pipe and this pipe? While the ground is exposed and open, we are taking survey shots on our underground pipes to get better control of that. You saw the pictures earlier. There's a spaghetti colander full of noodles of pipes out there that, well, I don't even know if that's a term, really. I know that our city administrator finds humor in that. But there's so many pipes in the ground out there that I'm afraid to even take a shovel out there and upturn a sprinkler head. So, but we're getting better at it.
I appreciate it. So we've been doing this a long time.
Yes.
So we're at 20,500,000 is the budget. We're coming in at 17.6 right now. Do you think that's done? And I guess the other question would be, why isn't that we're not paying for this change order out of that budget and not a line item for you guys?
We also have other things that have come out of that budgeted item. So that's why we're having to draw on our replacement fund.
Okay. So the budget's done. We've spent the 20,500,000 pretty much.
I believe so. I would have to check on that, Councilman Evans.
I just like to wonder if this is ever going to stop.
Spending?
Nothing against HDR, but, can you close it up and call it done?
This project? Yes,
this
I believe we're at,
Yeah, we don't anticipate any more change orders.
Okay. We've come a long way.
Yeah, you know, and like you said, we have a great facility that has been a tremendous benefit to the residents of Coeur d'Alene.
Absolutely. We're
So
on the
we've
cutting
come a
edge
long
of-
ways, all right.
Cutting edge of technology. I remember when we first started, it was sand. We thought they could filter sand and save the world. Not hardly. That was too bad. If there's no other questions, I'll look for a motion, please.
Well, I would move that the council approve change order number 2 to the agreement between the City of Coeur d'Alene and Apollo, Inc. for construction of the wastewater tertiary treatment Phase 2 improvements in the amount of $971,404.59.
And I will second that. The further discussion is, I'm still hoping to have some questions answered on how some of those change orders are being reviewed.
And this will go to council. I mean, it looks
We
like.
can bring it to council. Can you bring those questions back to us?
I certainly hope that Mike Anderson will be here to bring this before council, but
It would
in
probably
the
be-
event that he's not, I'd be happy to.
It's his turn, isn't it? So it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? I think that's fair. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We'd like that on the agenda, please. You good with that, Mike? Good job. Thank you.
Thank you
Mike.
very
Thanks
much.
for coming. Bet it cost us to have him here, huh?
No more change orders.
Thought it was worth it. Yeah, he told us it's over. So I'll look for someone to call for an adjournment, and we'd be
So
done.
moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. We're done here. Thanks for everybody coming. Thanks,
Good.
Mike.